What's good, everyone? Today we're going through my round 12 AFL tips and predictions, and of course reviewing round 11. It was the big Victoria gather round. I did go to the 7 games in 4 days, so there'll be a video out when it's finished. It'll probably be 3 or 4 weeks because I do have a few other things as well that I need to get out before that, but it's a big video. It wasn't the best week of footy when you think about it. I actually saw a stat somewhere, if we're going to go through, the margin kept increasing as every game continued, but let's go through my tips for the round. And I mean, it wasn't terrible, but it wasn't great. Some people got 9s, some people got 0s. Like, it was that bad. We start off on the Thursday night. Now, I did tip the Bulldogs. I forgot to tip, but because of the fact that Cats won, it didn't really affect me too much at all. I went Essendon over Richmond. So I thought I went Carlton this whole time. I was cheering for Carlton and everything, thinking that I tipped them, but apparently I accidentally went with the Giants, so I guess I'll take it. What can you do? I did go Hawthorn over Brisbane. I just thought Hawthorn, they're always better against the Lions at home. Wasn't the case this time round. And then I had Collingwood originally. I got sucked into changing it to North. So maybe that sort of balances things out, because I would have tipped Collingwood, I would have tipped Carlton. It sort of balances things out. I went Freo over Port, Adelaide over West Coast, Melbourne over Sydney, and this might be the last week I have faith in the Saints, because they were just not good enough against the Suns. It was overall a pretty disappointing week of footy tips. I actually did say, if you remember last week, that I was going to use my joker. Yeah, I didn't end up bothering. I won't be winning the mid-season prize, but there are people here that are a good chance of winning it. I'm 1,117th as we take a look at the total score after round 11. Now, remember, we need to get into contact with the leader after round 12, as they'll be winning the mid-season prize of $100. But it's Owen 32 with 87, Samit Batani with 86, Kathy Foden, Riley Fitz, and Richmond 900. So I know I don't normally say this, but maybe you use your joker this week if you're a chance of possibly knocking over top spot. Looking at round 11 and the users for the joker, I told you guys, make sure you use your joker this week. We had Daniel get an 8 with the joker score of double. Marginal 1, ESPN fan 794899. I'm not going to read the whole thing out there. Brock West, Jared, and Brock West again. Bit of a weird one there. Is this the same person? I'm not too sure. Tell you what, it was one of those weeks where some people got 3s, some people got 9s, and these people all got a perfect score. B. Goggins, Smig Snookers, Daddle 79, Willie Gaunt, Country Roads, all on the top 5 of the best scores. But we actually had a fair number, all tipping a perfect 9, getting that bonus 10th point. Now, looking at AFL Fantasy real quick, and it's Jacob does Fantasy once again. Overall ranking and in my comp at number 1 spot. I'm at 69th now. I've got a score of 22,171. If you look at my team, I went down in the rankings. So I didn't have the best week, and it's probably because of the fact that Garcia didn't play and I didn't realise. So Boxall was my emergency. He only scored the 35. And damn you, Cooper Simpson. So a couple of bad trades. I mean, I made the Merritt. He was a good trade. Dawson was a good captain. But I had a few other poor trades, like Zach Reid now. What am I going to do with him? Now, in terms of my big calls for last week, I obviously needed to get 3 to avoid the punishment. And I only ended up getting the 1 correct big call. That was in Melbourne v Sydney game, where I said that the D's would kick 5 or more final quarter goals. And I believe they ended up kicking 8. So they completely dismantled the Swans. But that means I do have to do this week's punishment. So let's take a look at the most liked punishment for this week. And it was from AFL Goat HQ, which was to chug a litre of chalky milk, then run 8 laps of the MCG. Now, I quickly realised that 8 laps would have been a little bit too excessive, given Jay Tomo's doing that for his own challenge. So what I've decided to do is 4 laps. I'll balance it out. I don't have to do everything that's said. 4 laps is fine. We will do that at some stage this year, maybe on a live stream. Now, the punishments that I did for this week were go to an AFL game in high heels. This one, that involves Minecraft. And also, after every free kick, or for a bunch of free kicks, I yelled, "What the fuck is that?" So enjoy a bit of a highlights package of some of the punishments that I had to get done.
Oh, come on, tackle him! Oh, what the fuck, umpire? How is that not a free kick? What the fuck, umpire? That is bullshit! What? Once again, umpire, that was bullshit. What the fuck was that? On the siren. Chicken jockey! I am Steve! Flint and Steel! Steve's like a chicken, yeah, it's tasty as hell.
How long are you going to be doing this for?
The whole game. This is the whole game. This is the whole game.
Are you serious?
More Cardman very shortly, but in the meantime, if you haven't already, vote down below for round 11. We've got the votes open for the 3-2-1 votes in the Cardi medal. You guys have done a really good job of getting the votes going, but let's try and see if we get 100 response this week. We only got 80 last week, so everyone do your bit, get involved as we head into the buy rounds. And if you haven't already, subscribe to the channel. This is the year that we're trying to push to 60k. Starting things off on the Thursday night, we have Brisbane and Essendon in it now. Live streams are back on the channel this week, and we start things off with this game and joined by a very special guest. You've probably seen him on TikTok. Scotty the Hottie will be joining me for this one. He's a big Essendon fan. But unfortunately for his sake, I wouldn't be expecting an Essendon win. I think they're now $8 to win this game, which just goes to show how well right now the Lions are doing. In recent memory, the Bombers have really not been challenging the Lions in any games they played at the Gabba. And, the form of the Gabba this year hasn't been amazing. The Lions, let's be real, they did lose to Melbourne, Collingwood, and had a few scares against the Cats and the Eagles. I think against Essendon, you would think that they should be too strong, even if they don't play at their best. Last week, they had an awesome win against the Hawks at the G. I watched half of this game. I don't remember much about this game. I remember Charlie Cameron kicked 3 goals in a row, but it was that second quarter where they kicked 7 goals, which sort of shifted the momentum going to their way, and from there on, they were the better side. They won most of the contested footy. They were just much harder at the contest, which against the Hawthorn side of the MCG, those are some positive sides heading into the buys. I feel like the Bombers, what are they now? They're 6-4, I think, on the ladder, but their percentage is still really poor. And I wouldn't say they were that convincing against Richmond. It only got to the last quarter where they started to really put the foot on the pedal, and they had a big last quarter, it seemed. Zach Merritt was massive. Nick Martin had one of the best fantasy games you'll see, and he was just all over Richmond, really. And their midfield certainly got on top in that last quarter. They won all the clearances pretty much. Angus Clark won the Rising Star nomination, so it'll be exciting to see how he goes this week against the Lions. 23-point win against Richmond. It's a brush-over win. Let's see Essendon actually take it up to a really good side and win against a proper top 8 side, especially away from home. This is their real opportunity to do so. If they can somehow find a result against Brisbane, maybe they're a possible top 8 contending side. I think they'll need to be at their absolute best, but even if that's the case, I still think Brisbane, even if they're not at their absolute best, will find a way to win. They'll take it up to Lions, though. I think this will be a fairly decent game, better than what a lot of people are expecting, but I'm going to I have to tip Brisbane. They're going to win this game, you would think. I'm going to say by 18 points with my big call that there'll be 3 or less goals combined in any quarter. Friday night footy, we have Collingwood take on Hawthorn, and after last week having 7 games in Victoria, this week just the 1 game being played there. I find that quite weird, actually. Can't remember the last time only 1 game for a home and away season was played in Victoria. So last week, it's probably clear to say that the Pies are still the premiership favourites. I think that was probably solidified the week before, but it just further proves my point. They kicked 8 goals to 1 against North Melbourne. Now, there are some people saying they only beat North, so who gives a shit? But they had a number of outs heading into the game. I know Pendlebury and Sidebottom were late outs. They didn't have Bobby Hill. Maynard, I'm pretty sure, was injured, and they had another injury, I'm pretty sure, as well during the game. So they had injuries. The injury list is continuing to pile up, yet they still find ways to do enough and dominate. And they really should have beaten North by more, especially that third quarter. They kept peppering the goals, and the floodgates really opened in the last quarter. They were just so much cleaner with the footy. They knew what they were doing, and North Melbourne just sort of collapsed in the defence. So very disappointing for North for that last quarter, but Collingwood, you've got to give them credit. They are heading into, whenever they have the bye, they're heading into the bye week with some good form. I still think they've got a couple of weeks till their bye. Hawthorn have only beaten the 1 top 8 side this year, which is a bit of a concern. People think Hawthorn are a top 4 side, but we haven't really seen it yet. They've been good without being great, and unfortunately, they were, certainly exposed against the Lions. They just didn't really want the footy as much as Brisbane did. They got beaten up in the midfield. They got beaten up in contested footy. And it was that second quarter, as I think I mentioned earlier, where they kicked 7 goals, the Lions to Hawthorn's 2. Look, I expect Hawthorn to bounce back because they seem to be quite solid in these sort of games. They love the primetime footy at the MCG, but they haven't really been able to get the opportunity against a really good side. So this is their real test for them. Hawthorn in previous years, even with them being bad, they seem to step up all right against the Pies, and they're pretty decent at stemming Nick Dacos' impact. Collingwood, I'm not sure how many ins they're going to have heading into this week, but if Pendlebury, if Sidebottom's still out, potentially the Hawks could get a 1-up in the midfield and could be a bit more even than what it was against the Lions last week. I reckon this will be a close game. I reckon it'll be a high-scoring game, but the Pies are humming, and I wouldn't be tipping against Collingwood right now, given how good they've been. And they always seem to find ways to win these type of games. Jack Ginnivan, hopefully against his former side, steps up and has a big impact. But I'm going to go safe here. Whilst I can see the Hawks winning, I think you just got to go safe right now, and you always just got to tip the Pies. So I'm going to go Collingwood to win this one by 13, with Jack Ginnivan to kick 4 or more goals. Alrighty, heading to the Saturday games now, and we start off with Gold Coast and Fremantle. Now, I think this is an underrated one, to be honest with you. Only 5% of tips are going for Fremantle, but honestly, I think the Dockers are more of a chance than what they might seem. I think this will be competitive because the Dockers have turned their season around now after the last 2 weeks. They went to NG to beat the Giants, and quite convincingly. And I know Port Adelaide's form right now has been poor, but they smashed them by 50. So they got some good form going, and the Dockers have never really been a strong side against Port Adelaide regardless. So I know the Powers' form has been poor, but it was a pretty solid effort, especially in that second half. Murphy Reid kicked 4 goals, and I feel like their team chemistry is starting to build more and more. Shai Bolton, he wasn't as good as he was the last few weeks, but I expect him to shine again in one of these sort of games. They could be pushing a finals run here, and it wouldn't surprise me if they can shake up the Suns, who are in some extremely good form. They're third on the ladder. They've got the second best percentage in the league. They led all game against the Saints and never looked like losing, despite having a period for when the Saints were really on top in terms of territory. They just couldn't capitalise, and the Suns were better with the footy, and they used the footy a lot better. They were cleaner, and they had more chances up forward with their midfield certainly getting on top. We are getting to that sort of point in the season now where we tend to see the Suns start falling off at this point. Whilst I don't think anything major is going to happen for the Suns, I can see this being one of those sort of games where the Dockers just continue their pretty good form that they've been in the last couple of weeks and upset the Suns. I think they're going to get on top of the midfield. Hopefully Josh Tracy, Jai Miss can link up forward. And I know Alex Pearce is going to be out. That could be a possible determining factor. If he doesn't get up, potentially maybe I change my tip back to the Suns. Ben King could have a big day at the office, but I think the Dockers, they'll be the first side to knock off the Suns at People's First Stadium, and I'm going to be tipping them to win this game by 20 points. This is my upset tip of the round. I think the Dockers are going all right, and I reckon they'll kick 5 or more consecutive goals. With 2 games in Queensland, we now head to the first in New South Wales with GWS take on Richmond, and after last week's performance against Carlton, the Giants seem to be a finals lock if they can just continue playing footy like that, and I feel like they always seem to get going later on in the season. They seem to have like a bit iffy starts. I think they did last year, and they sort of seem to just start getting their season ticking along as the other weeks go by. They certainly showed up for Toby Green's 250th. Toby Green himself certainly did. He had a massive game with 3 goals and a BOG performance, and they were just so much cleaner with the footy than Carlton were. They just found the better options, and yeah, it was a really big quality difference in that game, and it was frustrating because I actually wanted Carlton to win, but GWS are just a lot better, and they seem to be that sort of team that always have good ball users and always find the right target. So Hogan wasn't amazingly impactful, but still had a fairly good game, and I think he could certainly dominate in this game against the Tigers, because obviously they're not going to have Noah Bolter again with a curfew and all that. They are back at home. And Richmond, look, they're okay. They're competitive. They've been better than what most people have predicted them heading into this year, but they're still Richmond, and they're going to have those lapses in games, which they did in that last quarter against Essendon, because they're competitive for 3 quarters, but they couldn't execute some of the basic skills, Richmond, and they did fade away in that last quarter. Probably should have lost the game by a little bit more. Sam Lawler's also going to be out for 4 to 6 weeks with an injury, which is quite disappointing to see, so I just don't expect Richmond to be competitive. I think this is going to be one of those games where the Giants, they're capable of just smashing the poorer sides, and at home, I think they'll do it by 70 points with my big call that GWS have 5 or more players top the disposal count. Final game Saturday night. This will be a streamed one. Sydney v Adelaide in Alice Springs. I'll be streaming this game. And I think it's got the potential of being a really close and even contest. I do feel like the Swans right now, they're going to know that their season's basically on the line. They are 4-7, and if they start 4-8, Brisbane, I know Brisbane were 4-7 to start last year, but it just feels a little bit differently this year with Sydney. They had a really, really poor week last week against the D's, and they were absolutely smashing the contest. I think they were minus 27 for contested footy, and the scoreboard certainly flattered them, I felt. I was reading the comments on the Sydney Instagram page. I was there for the first quarter. It seemed relatively even though the Swans didn't get a chance up forward until like 16 minutes into the first. Yeah, it was a really poor effort. I don't know what's up with Sydney. Is it a bit of mixture of injuries? Is it Dean Cox's new game plan? They're just not, getting adjusted to it? Or is it simply just the fact that they lost in last year's granny by that much, and they seem to just have terrible seasons every year? Teams that do lose in grannies by a lot have shocking seasons the year after, and this trend is only just continuing. Adelaide, they're a different side this year after having a poor one last year. They're sitting 4th on the ladder, and they got that win that we all expected against West Coast. They really flexed their muscles in that last quarter and a half, and it was, 13, 15 points at halftime. It was a 66-point win in that last quarter. Dawson continuing his stellar season. Great to have him as a fantasy captain this week. And Rochelle kicked 5 of his own. They are playing at the SCG against Sydney, which has been a challenge as of late for the Crows. The last 6 matchups between these two sides have all been Sydney wins, with the last win for the Crows being back in 2019. We all remember what happened in 2023 with the umpire controversy. This is at the SCG, but the Swans haven't been the best at the SCG either. And at the moment, the Crows are that superior side. So I could see Adelaide winning by a fair amount. The Swans, I'm just not convinced right now of them this year. I think they're going to be competitive, but the Crows, I reckon, are going to get up in a thrilling contest. This could be the game of the round. I'm going to pick it, and I'm going to go Adelaide by 3 points, with there being 8 or more goals and behinds combined for both sides. Alrighty, Sunday afternoon footy, TAO Traeger Park. We've got Melbourne and St Kilda. I actually have lost that D-scarf now, so I'll need to get a new one before the Big Freeze game next week. Now, this is a game I'm going to. You guys probably think I'm crazy given the Saints' recent form and just the fact that it is literally the most expensive trip in footy to go to Alice Springs. And yeah, we have gotten the Ds, I reckon, at the worst time possible. It's been a really weird last 5 or 6 weeks in terms of the turnaround. Since gather round, both sides have formed. They've flipped on their head. Melbourne were looking terrible at that stage. The Saints looking pretty good. Flipped on its head, and Melbourne are now looking like a side that could maybe even play finals if they continue the way they're going. They've been really good. We're getting wins now against some decent sides. The last 2 sides that made the grand final in Brisbane and Sydney. And last week against Sydney, they were just obliterating them. Like, from the highlights that I saw, they had double the amount of scoring shots. They scored their highest amount for the entire year. And Melbourne have never struck me as that side to score a lot of points, especially this season as well. Cozzy Pickett kicked 5 goals. And him at the MCG just having these random, extremely impressive performances. If he continues the way he's going, his market value is going to go up. Gawn, Petrarca, Oliver, they're in some really good form as well. And as I said earlier, 27 more contested possessions. So that's going to be a real worry for St Kilda because we seem to lack in that department. And it just seems like for now with St Kilda that we've been sucked away of all our creativity. It was just such a flat game to be a part of for a St Kilda fan. Like, it wasn't even worth posting a match day vlog. The Saints recorded their lowest ever home Marvel crowd in their history of just 13,000. It was just terrible. There was no atmosphere. We looked flat. We never really felt like we had a chance of winning despite, again, in that third quarter, being all right. The effort was actually there, but the execution certainly wasn't, which was a major letdown. And unfortunately, with the 5 of our last 6 games being losses, and not one of those losses have we looked any bit of dangerous, which is really disappointing. So I'm hoping we can go back to basics and just play like we did the first 4 to 5 weeks. Melbourne could belt the Saints here if we saw, you know, the last couple of weeks, the D's performances, but I just feel like we'll get more of an even contest, and it's at Teo Traeger Park. We've played there once and got done in a thriller. The D's haven't been able to score much at all at Teo Traeger Park. It's a bit of a weird ground, so I'm not expecting much. I'm expecting a loss, and I'm hoping not, because I'll be spending over $1.5 basically on this fucking trip. I'm going to tip the D's to win this by 6 points. I think it'll be a close one. It'll be a low-scoring affair. I want to see the Saints actually score over 100 points interstate. I've only seen that like once in my life, which is just, it's not good enough. It just is not good enough. But yeah, we're going to be tipping this one, Melbourne by 6 points, and I'm going to say that no team scores over 70. And final game of the round, we have West Coast Geelong at Optus Stadium. Probably not the one you'd expect to be very close, with just the 1% of tipsters going for the Eagles. West Coast went back to their old ways in that second half against Adelaide with a positive start, and unfortunately a poor finish that led to a 66-point loss. But they do play better at home, the Eagles, so you never know. Maybe that slight chance of an upset could be on the cards, because obviously they did manage to beat the Saints the week before. But not many people are expecting them to back up that performance, given the quality of Geelong is levels above St Kilda. And Geelong, it was a really good game on that Thursday night. It was probably the game of the round, or definitely game of the round, but probably game of the year, to be honest. The Cats got up in the Bailey Smith Cup, scoring 127-113. They seem to always have the answers when the Dogs responded. You could argue really good accuracy was partly due to why, and some favourable umpiring probably helped their causes. But overall, they got the job done at GMHBA, played a full 4-quarter effort, and you'd think that they should get the job done if they can beat the Bulldogs like that against the Eagles. Shannon Neal kicked 5. Jezza Cameron's in some great form, kicking 6. Ollie Dempsey continuing his great form. And Max Holmes had an awesome game. It was obviously on top of Bailey Smith, who's in Brownlow form. They got a lot of star plays shining at the right time. I think West Coast could take it up to Geelong in this game, because the Cats have never really been a great side when they have played West Coast away. They've always been shaky, even when they've been poor. So maybe West Coast take it up to Geelong for longer than we think. But overall, I think the Cats win this game by 39 points, with the Eagles leading after half-time. Let me know if you want to see me stream this game as well. If I have the time to in my shitty motel in Alice Springs, I might be able to stream West Coast v Geelong, considering it's like a 3 or 4 minute walk from the ground. Quickly going through my tips for the week, we had Brisbane, Collingwood, Freo as my upset, GWS, Adelaide, Melbourne and Geelong. The buys we have for this week are Carlton, North Melbourne, Port Adelaide and the Bulldogs. I don't like how we have 4 bye weeks. Like, just reduce the number, because when the buys come around, it feels like it's a mid-season depression for the AFL community. So hopefully you guys don't click off the videos over the next few weeks. And I've enjoyed this one as well. Hit that like button, comment down below a big call punishment, and we'll see you very soon tomorrow for a new video.